This time of year, and we've been waiting because before I begin this, we've been talking about Future Ready Index, which is something new to the state. So what I wanted to do was to wait until all that came out to kind of talk about everything all at once and talk about all the information that would be provided to us. What I'm going to do is walk through the PSSAs, the Keystones, the APs, the SAT, the ACT, as I typically do. And then at the end, I'm going to give you some information about how to navigate the Future Ready Index site that's public. All right, thanks. All right, so that's what I'll do. I'll go through those exams. So this is the post-high school plans, which I generally show. I think this has been a slide that we've shown for a number of years straight. So we have 79% of our graduates from last year attending a 4 or 2 year college, and the year prior was 81%. We have other post-graduation training at 1%. Entering the military, we're at 5%. Last year we were at 4%. Entering the workforce, this year we're at 13%. Last year we were at 12%. And last year 1%, other than this year we're at 2%. So it's not much of a difference. This is pretty consistent, this data. Our this is a 3-year look at SAT statistics. So you can see in the area of reading we've had an increase of 62 points over 3 years, and math an increase of 46. So we're making good gains with SAT. And I really would like to say I think that's partially attributed to PCEF's boot camp for SAT. They run a boot camp, our Pennridge Community Ed Foundation.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know that, I just think it's probably one of the factors that's been helping us too. That's good news. Our ACT scores, not as many students take ACT, and we don't see anything really statistically significant. Over 3 years, English is decreased by 0.3, math 1.4, reading 0.9, and science 0.6. So a little decrease in ACT, while a pretty significant increase in SAT.
I'm sorry. Can we go back one slide?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything about participation in terms of percent of students who take the ACT and the SAT? I'm surprised by because we have fairly significant math SAT growth, but it's the largest decrease on ACTs. And I don't know whether that's because it's such a small percentage that, or whether there is something there to the types of students who are taking which exams.
I don't know if there's anything other there. There's definitely a lower percentage of students who take ACTs. Traditionally, the students are taking SATs, or they'll look at their college or university and see what the match is. Some students take both of those, and I think, Mrs. Herring, you talked about that. Some students are going to take both and see how well they do with both of them.
Most of the top flights are asking for both now.
But, okay, so that is not typical for our students. Some students do that. Most of our students are taking the SAT. Now, I know we have, I'm going to talk just a little bit about our AP, and I know Dr. Bolton will share some really good news. So 355 students took 645 AP exams. 82% of these students received a score of 3 or higher. This is what we've been working towards. The number of students taking AP exams increased by a margin of 28% from the prior year. So the percentage of students scoring 3 or higher really decreased only by 3.5%, but significantly more students took that exam. And what we really believe is that when we talk about college ready, taking an AP exam, whether or not you score a 4 or a 5, just by virtue of taking that exam, will help you become college ready because you get to experience a college level course. So we're pleased with the increase in the number of students taking that exam. So we offer 21 AP courses. We did propose the AP capstone for next year, and we also are thinking for the following year, offering at least one, if not two more AP courses. So we're on the right track for AP, but I know we have other good news to share, and I'm going to leave that to Dr. Bolton.
Does your next slide have some of that information? I think you
Yes.
should share right
Oh,
now,
I'm sorry.
Because that just gives you a sense for where those advanced placement courses are. We just received in the mail about 3 hours ago. It was right before Ms. Chenoweth left at 5 o'clock. And so at some point she said, oh, look what came. And so we actually received
that's
the
nice.
banners to announce, consistent with the email that I sent out today, that Pennridge has been named to the 9th Annual AP District Honor Roll. I am not in a habit of sending an email to the entire district. This is a big deal from an achievement and a recognition standpoint. It is the first time that Pennridge has been on this list. It is, and the information that was in my email, there are only 373 schools in all of North America, so that is the United States and Canada, who received this award. Only 46 out of the 500 schools in Pennsylvania received this award, and only 4 of the 13 schools in Bucks County. Now, what this really does speak to is it speaks to participation, both in general as well as underrepresented populations, and it speaks to performance. The performance has continued to be strong. 82% of our students scored a 3 or higher, and that is down slightly from the year before, but is still a significant number. Anything above 70 meets the threshold. There doesn't need to be an increase, you just have to be above 70, which is what they say is proficient for this number. The 28% increase in participation is huge. They look for 4% increase to honor you with this award, and Pennridge was at 28%. And so, although I take no credit for it, obviously, I do want to trumpet it and congratulate the students and the parents and the counselors and the teachers who encouraged that many more students to take that. And so from that standpoint, that is huge, as well as underrepresented populations. The advanced placement looks every year at any underrepresented population, and how they define that is any population where fewer than 50% of the students choose to take the test. So if you've got 300 students that are of a minority group sitting nationwide and fewer than 150 take that, they become underrepresented. They're trying to encourage participation rates that are similar across all demographics. In Pennridge, our numbers either stayed the same or increased in every one of those groups that we have. We don't have them all. I think there are 19 underrepresented groups, and I think we have 6 or 7 of them. But in all of those groups, our participation, our achievement stayed high, and our participation either stayed the same or increased, which is the third piece of this. And so it just really is a celebration of our students doing a really wonderful job, but also having more students and a diverse group of students being involved in this, which is why I want to take every opportunity that I can to celebrate that and to thank the teachers and the counselors and the administration and the curriculum folk and the parents and the students who work their tails off to do that well for that honor. So I just wanted to put a little oomph behind that. I know you got my email and I repeated many things, but it is something to be very excited about from a performance standpoint for you. So,
Thank you, Dr. Bolton.
Dr. Shah.
We are very excited.
I'm sorry
I'm
to
sorry.
interrupt, but
Oh, I'm sorry.
the percentage with the 3 or higher is slightly lower, but this year was May of 18 was the first year that we had our 10th grade AP Physics, right? That was the first year for that class, and those kids had a heck of a time.
They
and
really
they
did.
really they stuck
Wow,
with it
they
and
did. That
took
is
the
a good
test.
point.
So they should be commended. And then was comp sci ninth grade also the first year last year, or did we have that
No,
the year
that was
before?
the
It was
year
the second
before.
year maybe.
Mhm.
Okay, but so I think those 10th graders with the AP Physics, I think that could account for some of it. But
I'm
they,
so glad you brought that up. That was a struggle.
It
For the
was.
students who went through and did that, they should be applauded for
Yeah.
that. Thank you,
So.
Mrs. Cullen. Yes, that was one. Good for them.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about Keystone. So we have 3 years worth of data for our lit, algebra, for the high school, for the middle school, and then our bio. So they're relatively consistent. Our numbers across the board are consistent. You'll see that with Keystones and PSSAs. So it's a slight dip over 3 years in lit a slight increase over 3 years in the middle school, about 8% for Algebra 1 for the middle school, an increase by, 2% over 3 years for Algebra in high school, and an increase of 4% for Bio. So, as you can see, the high school students, there's far less students taking that as well.
Can you just back up for a second?
Yeah.
There were some major changes, right, that you had made that encouraged the participation in the AP testing, right, from last year?
We did. We have been doing that. Philosophically, like I said, we really believe that it does help students become college ready. If you just, by virtue of taking that risk and taking that class, even though you may not get the A in that class, that the experience itself would be a benefit. And that's what all the departments that you have been talking about, the teachers have been talking about, and Mr. Japicki and the supervisors. I mean, but that is what we have been saying. And we've heard that from the board. We've heard that from you. We've heard that from the community about the AP courses. And so that was the response, and it was an overwhelming response that you can see from the students, so.
And didn't we used to require them to take finals in addition to the AP, and now didn't we change that?
We did adjust that.
And so that was a big change too, because then they didn't have to take both classes, and it was incentivizing taking the AP.
We did that I'm trying to get the specifics on the
I know
finals.
we talked about it, but I wasn't sure if
Last
it
year.
ever got changed. And when I saw the big increase, I thought maybe.
Not for the class of 2018.
No, what we changed is the exemption from finals, the grading structure and the exemption from finals overall. We haven't addressed whether you're taking the AP test or not. We've addressed it in conversation, but we haven't made a final.
To put it
decision.
in making it part of procedure.
Right.
That'd be nice.
So that makes sense, that would also increase that even more,
Would be a
right?
nice
Right,
little,
exactly.
yeah.
So I think when you look at the fact that 24% of our students may not have taken that without the additional encouragement, and they did well on it, and now they're getting that college credit for it, I think that's awesome.
Well,
Thank
they
you.
don't automatically get college credit.
No.
Well,
Remember
it
that,
depends who
right?
you're going to.
It
Well, they
depends on
don't.
what you're taking and where you're going, exactly.
Yeah.
So that can be a discouraging
Yeah.
factor, actually.
It could be. But they're taking it anyway, which is, I guess,
And
the
that's great,
encourage,
I
right.
mean, but-
Yes,
But it
right,
isn't
they're not
automatic.
automatic.
You get a 3 and
Right.
you get credit. Depends
not.
on
Which college?
which college you're
It-
going
it-
to and
It's
which course.
not, but, I mean, yeah, it saved my kids a lot.
Okay. So now, after each Keystone and PSSA, we broke it down by program, just to give you an idea. So if you take a look for the proficient and advanced scores for the literature Keystone, and they're broken down by category, so free and reduced lunch, gifted. Limited English proficiency, so students, English is their second language. Section 504, it's such a minimal number, and the number of students in that population, and we didn't see much significance there anyway. Special ed, and then a total of general ed. So you can see that gifted ranges from 98% to 100%. So it's pretty consistent for our gifted students for proficient and advanced, and you'd expect that. Our limited English proficiency scores are really very high. And when you look through the Future Ready Index, all of our schools who had the N number, the number of students that you could get credit for, all of us, every school made the goal, reached the goal. So we're doing a really nice job in that regard. The special education students did drop just let's see, yeah, 4% there. And then overall, we're still remaining in the 70 range. We don't want to stay in the 70 range, I just need to tell you, even though these look very consistent. And if you look across the state, now, we don't know what the county scores look like overall yet, because they're not public yet, so we don't know what they are. So I can't give you the comparison like I have, where I would rank our elementary and our secondary. I can't do that yet, because the scores, these aren't public yet. Future Ready Index and whatnot. You can go through Future Ready Index, but the actual scores aren't coming out until the end of December. So while these are consistent and we have remained in the 70s, our goal is to really move us at least we push towards the 80s and hopefully like towards the low 90s, because we believe we can do that.
I think there is a contributing factor to have it drop. I think that was 77 last year to 72, 5% in the gen ed. And do you think there was any factors in there that made it drop that much? Because you were almost at 80%, now you're back.
We almost were, and we did identify one of the major areas that we're working on, because I'm showing you these overall scores, but we actually get data on the modules and on the standards and the skills. So we can see where we're doing really, really well, and we can see where we really need some work. And one of the areas, and it's consistent across all grade levels, no matter what we're doing, is vocabulary development. And that is why, hence Words Their Way and vocabulary and the new reading program. I mean, really, we need to have students be reading and writing more.
You know what we need to do?
What?
Tell the Cullen children, only the Cullen children. They have to read the dictionary like their mother did.
Oh, okay, we'll add that.
Only those two, 3.
All right,
Only
we'll
those
pull them
Like a
out.
special request.
That's my special request.
Needs a whole lot.
Reading the dictionary is great.
So as we know, most of our, 60% of the students in Pennridge take algebra in the middle school. So there's where your pretty high-performing kids are taking algebra. And they're pretty consistent too. You know, the gifted are still 98 range. We increased the LEP over the 3-year period by 7%, but there was a drop from one year to the next. And special education, as you can see, that was a really high number at 97%. But we're still, in terms of special education students, we still are doing a good job. We do see that what we're implementing is working, and I'll talk more about that because it's broad across all 3 subject areas. So we're remaining steady in algebra at about, in the low 80s. And again, they're consistent, but we know that we need to improve, and we expect to. Oh, okay, so this is the high school. I do want to note, in particular, the gifted, because you saw 100%, 100%, and 63. So I had to go look at the number for that. I'm like, wait a minute, because that's pretty significant, and I didn't really see significance in other places. So, excuse me, for the last 2 years, 1 student, and last year, 8 students. So it was the number of students, because that was significant, going from 100 to 63%. And our LEP students, we need to work there. We do. We have some work to do there. And our Section 504, you're talking about 5, 6 kids. So statistically speaking, that's not something that we're upset about. Of course, we pay attention to that because they require certain accommodations as well. And you see special education inching 13, 14 to 16%, and then we have 38, 33, 34% of our high school students who are proficient and or advanced. And we're working on that, in particular in algebra. So I'm going to share with you what our plan is for math. I have it on the slide after we're finished the keystone, so I'll share that with you. And then we have our bio, and our science scores in this district are strong, across all of them, in the PSSAs and the keystone. So you see again, with the gifted students, we're ranging 98 to 100%. Our limited English proficiency did decrease from last year, so we are developing a strong LEP program. I do expect those scores to go up. They should be increasing, and we also will be introducing that course for students, for LEP students in science next year. So we are addressing it in that way. We did make gains in special education, and I want to talk about why. So The lit exam scores showed a slight decrease of 4%. However, the gifted population had a slight increase of 2%. This is just the general summary. Special education student scores actually decrease, as is the overall education, general ed population. And in the area of literature, in the area of reading, writing, in the area of literacy, that is really where we're putting our emphasis. You can see we come to every meeting and talk about strengthening our elementary program into the middle school, and then at secondary, so middle and high school. The Algebra 1 exam scores it indicates an overall improvement of 5% of proficient and advanced students from last year. So our overall was 72.6 last year, and we're at 77.7 this year. Now the bio exam scores increased by 4%. There was a significant improvement in special education. There's 159 students. We really attribute a lot of this to the decision to eliminate that transitional bio course and move students into the academic courses. Now that has been very difficult. And I think that the teachers were surprised when they saw the scores, and we had wonderful, Dr. Dormer and I had wonderful conversations about that. We do know that it's challenging, but we're talking about differentiation in those classrooms. We're supporting teachers to meet the needs of all learners, and we are seeing the fruit of the labor there. So providing a standards-based class in a tested area, even in non-tested areas, to be perfectly frank, is the right thing to do for most students. So we are happy to report those scores. So they're the keystone. Wait, I don't think I talked about what we were doing in math. I may have saved that for the another slide, because we're going to be doing some work in math across the board. But let's go to proficiency for 3-year PSSA scores in ELA in middle schools. So you can see, if you look at gifted, 99, 100%. Oh, I'm sorry. Right, I keep looking myself. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself here. There we go. Okay, so we are looking at ELA achievement and growth, proficient and advanced 3 years for PSSA. And you can see they are incredibly stable. So we're ranging in the high 70s to the mid 80s. And again, they're stable, so things are consistent. And our job now is to move them forward. All right. So now we look at ELA middle school by program, and that's what I was talking about. So 99, 100% for gifted, and our 504 students strong. Our LEP, they made gains from last year because the year prior there were no students in taking that test. An improvement in our special education, 43 from 35, 37. So we're pleased with that, and then, you know, in the mid 85% for ELA at the middle school. So ELA at the elementary school, again, you're seeing incredible consistency here. So our gifted students are doing well. 504, our LEP students are making gains. Our special education students, 48%. We're remaining relatively stable there, and we're in the high 80s for ELA at the elementary schools. And we know that we can improve there as well, and we have every intention to do so. So math achievement doesn't look as impressive as the ELA achievement as across this state. It doesn't look as impressive. But our third grade scores were in that low 70, and you're going to see that. They dip when you come to the middle schools, and that is really what I'll talk about, what we're going to do. I talked about it last year. We put some things in place, and we have more things to put in place this coming year. So overall, you'll see that those 50 ranges, we cannot stay there. We don't want to stay there. We absolutely aren't going to, but I wanted to show you separating them out between elementary and middle school math. So this is the middle school math. No, I'm sorry.
Might have skipped one.
Did I skip one? Hold on. There's the middle school math. Not where we want to be. you pull them out, they're significantly lower than elementary school, which has been our issue. And I'll talk about why. And then here are our elementary math scores. So again, I guess the overall message here is that gifted students are still doing very well. Special education students aren't doing as well as general education students, but we are making improvements. One of the things that, you're seeing 80%, 76%, we do have a standards aligned elementary math program that has been put in place. So our next level up of work is providing professional development for teachers. Mrs. Kolez is taking the lead from that, and Dr. Bolton has been helpful in that area as well for flexible small group instruction in math at the elementary schools, which we haven't done. We've done small group instruction in reading. You'll see guided reading groups, but now we're going to apply that same philosophy to math. So, overall, the math scores across elementary students that remain relatively stable. Middle schools, grade 6 increased by 4% from last year. 7th grade remained stable, and a slight decrease in grade 8 is noted. The decrease was likely due to the following factors. A new math program was introduced to teachers and students last year and had not been fully established, so it was year 1 of implementation. But we do have a standards-aligned math curriculum now. Approximately 60% of middle school students take Algebra 1 in 7th or 8th grade and are not specifically taught those math standards associated with the PSSA math, because if I'm taking algebra or geometry, I'm not in PSSA standard math. So the math department is working to, and they've already did that, they've done this. They've already examined the eligible content on the PSSA, and then they're going to determine how they can take some of the skills and standards that are appropriate and applicable and infuse them into the algebra class and the geometry class so that the students are exposed to that information and provided some opportunity for instruction in those areas. Because the consensus for PSSA versus that Keystone is the math PSSA is challenging and it's rigorous. And they need to be taught that. So if you're not in those classes, you're not getting that. So that is what we worked this year to see what made sense while I'm taking that geometry class, that teachers can teach some of the content from the math PSSA 8.
Dr. Shada, you want to speak a little bit about the building data team?
Yes.
Okay. Because I think that's a significant piece to this when you drill down to building by building in terms of their ownership for their piece of this, because you're seeing some overall data in terms of what's happening in 3rd grade and 5th grade and 7th grade. And so to also talk a little bit about the work that Dr. Scheid has been doing with the IU support at the building level with their specific data, I think is not insignificant.
Absolutely not. And if I could just finish the science,
Sure.
I could go right
Sorry.
into that particular
Jump
topic.
ahead.
So our science scores, as I report every year, and it's always wonderful to report that, they are we're doing well in science. 4th grade, there becomes this dip in 8th grade. So 8th grade PSSA science is 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade science tested in 8th grade. So it's not 8th grade science, it's all those years, right? So that department is looking at the content in those courses to see if we should align them differently, see if there are redundancies, eliminations, holes. So they're taking a look at that now in 8th grade, because if you can see the difference between 4th grade and 8th grade. And we wanted to know why. What is, other than the obvious, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, all tested in one exam, we wanted to take a look and make sure that the way we structured the middle school math made the most sense for students. So we're doing that now. And again, it's just unbelievable consistency that we see. But our take a look at this, if you would. Take a look at the special education scores. Our students are always included in science. Special education students receive science instruction with everyone. They may be pulled out for reading and math, but they're not pulled out for science. And you can see the result of that. So they are the overall scores kind of the state of the union overall. I talked a little bit about our 4th grade and our 8th grade, and our secondary science department is really looking at the curriculum and paying close attention to three-dimensional learning, really, with the next generation science standards. But to Dr. Bolton's point, what we have done, and we did this last year, is that we meet with every principal. Each principal comes to a meeting. Last year I did them. I ran them by myself not by myself, the supervisors were there, but I ran those meetings with the building principals to take a look at the achievement data and the PVAS growth data. And this year we had Rachel Holler come down and run those meetings. We ran those together. She did a wonderful job of really helping principals drill down on the data to see where we need to be working in our schools and where our strengths are. So how does that relate to building level? All of our elementary buildings have established data teams. So at the elementary level, teachers, because this is established now over the last couple of years, have had a lot of practice in using the Linkit data. We have the Linkit warehouse that stores our data, and it's an analytics system. So it helps all of us see the standards and skills that students are doing very well in and where they need some help. So teachers and building teams have gotten very good at looking at their data. And the data is important, formative and summative data, benchmark data, all of that is important to help guide instruction, help teachers make those instructional decisions in their classroom. Middle schools also, as part of the comprehensive plan across the board, we have child study teams, and that's what we talked about with the development of the comprehensive plan. So within the structure of child study teams is data analysis. So we are establishing them. They are not at the point at elementary because they've had another year of it. Middle school now is in that rhythm where teams of teachers and administrators are working together to take a look at that data to inform instruction, to improve student achievement. At every department level at the high school, that is what occurs as well. So can I bring up that CDT data one more time? The CDT data, the classroom diagnostic tools that we're using, they are being established now for next year. We are going to be using them in middle and high school in the 3 subject areas so that all the teachers are comfortable using that kind of data. They understand that data and how it's related to that particular exam to help inform instruction and to help inform us with our curriculum, to make sure that we're looking at the curriculum across the vertical alignment of our curriculum as well as horizontal. So all schools look at data, analyze data for instructional purposes. And it matters because we can't make assumptions about instruction. We cannot do that blindly, and we need to be able to have the data that will most support us as we help to move our students. So you can see this, it's consistent, but we all believe that Pennridge School District can move even further than where we currently are performing. Does that make sense? Is there anything you want to add that, Dr. Bolton?
No, it just was the experience I had new to the system in terms of watching the principals interact with that and then having an experience of, I've been to 3 of the data meetings, 2 in elementary school, 1 at a middle school, to see how the teams then do truly drill down to for this building. And so the principals, as they develop their goals, often will have a or 2 data goals specific to either CDTs or something they've noticed within their system or PSSA or Keystone that they're working through with their staff from that. So, because this data really is from a curriculum standpoint and a district standpoint, so I wanted you to speak a little bit to that work doesn't stop at the curriculum district level. Most of that is done at the building level as they're looking at theirs, and then we're supporting the district level initiatives through the curriculum.
Yes, we are, and the supervisors work very closely with the building level too. So what happens is we drill down and we can see the skills and standards. I personally can see them across the entire district, as Dr. Bolton is talking about, but you can also see them specific by schools. So we give that data to the building principal so that they can work with their particular staff. So it really does boil down to the building level. Now, I've been talking about Future Ready Index, the keys for progress measures. That is the website. It's futurereadypa.org. You can go to that website and this is what I'm going to suggest you do, because otherwise you're going to go crazy going back and forth. If you just put Pennridge in, just write Pennridge, it will list all the schools. Now, you'd still have to go back and forth, but it is much easier. So just put Pennridge in. When you click on that, click on whichever school you want to look at, and it'll give you all of this data. It's the same data I just showed you, but they report it a little bit differently. So this is the key. You see the circles and the arrows. So on the left-hand side where you see the colored circles, that's the progress towards the goals, the goal that Pennsylvania has established. So the statewide goal for the year 2030, the end result, is a decrease of the percentage of students not meeting proficiency and advanced by half. And that is the way it's worded, but it is kind of convoluted. So they want to decrease the number of students who aren't proficient in and or advanced by half, and their end year is 2030. That is what this first line meets or exceeds the statewide goal. But then they're going to have yearly 13 years of interim targets. That's your second line there. Are you meeting or exceeding the interim, the yearly target year to year? And then the last one you see there, not meeting statewide or the interim target. And we don't want to be there. So you can see that the red is not a good thing. The green is just like you've seen before, maintaining, and then the blue, strong blue, just like the PVAS data I showed last year, is exceeding the goal. But you're not only going to see the circles and the colors, you're also going to see these arrows. So you might see the arrows are going to represent current and previous performance comparison. So they're going to tell you whether you increased in performance from the last year, you maintained it, or you're decreasing. So theoretically, you could be meeting the interim target, but you could be decreasing from the previous year. So they added another layer with these arrows. If the circles aren't enough, you're going to get the arrows too. But I didn't want you to be thoroughly confused on here. So that's kind of basically what this the key indicates. But I do want to let you know overall, because you've been listening to all this, you don't want to go through every school. All elementary schools and the high school met or exceeded the statewide goal. They all did. The
They're all
middle
green.
school,
They're all green.
they're going to be green and blue. They either met it or they exceeded
Okay.
it. You'll see that. There's some of our elementary schools are all blue. Middle schools met it for science and ELA, but they didn't meet it for math, as you can see, because that's what the data just indicated. The on-track measures, all school, so you're going to have statewide data, you're going to have on-track measures, and on-track measures are measuring that LEP, the limited English proficiency, and attendance. In that area, all schools met all measures on track, all of them. Then you're going to see the college and career benchmarks, and that all schools met that too. All of our schools met that. Nobody didn't meet those either. And that is about showing evidence that we're preparing our students for college and career. And that starts at the elementary school, where they'll have to write a letter, to a business saying, I'm interested in this. So all of our students, all of our schools met that too. So you'll be able to see that when you look into Future Ready Index. It's not necessarily intuitive, but you can play around in there. It's not going to tell you anything that you didn't see tonight, other than you'll see more of the PVOS data, the growth data per school, which I kind of showed you last year, or what that meant. This will be able to break down, but what you can see right away are colors. So when you open up Bedminster, for example, you're going to see blue, 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 blue. And when you see blue, they're exceeding the goals. And most of the schools, you're going to see some blue, some green, and in middle schools, you're going to see the red in math, just what you saw up here. So if you want to take a look at that, that's the website, and I hope that the key is somewhat helpful to you. And that ends the presentation.
Comment? Oh, nothing. And anything to say?
I'll go first. The changes that you've made to the math curriculum, at what point do you feel like we should start to see those changes reflected in the scores?
Typically, they'll say up to like about a 3-year period before you really start seeing the scores increase. We were pretty sure we wouldn't see anything the first year, an implementation dip the first year, teachers learning the program. So we should expect to see that within a 3-year period when you introduce a new program.
So we rolled it out one grade level at a time in the middle school, right?
No, we have them all, 6, 7, and 8.
But it was like the kids who were in 6th grade.
They got it first.
It started with 6th, and then it
It
would
did.
continue with them as they moved up the line.
And algebra, yes.
So right now, what grade, the ones who started in 6th grade?
2.
Are in,
They're only in the
This
second?
near, no, they're 3 and the rest are 2, because, no, wait a minute, now I'm confusing myself. Yes, so everybody had it 6th and 7th. Now we're in 8th. So then, this
So
would
this
be
is-
year 2 of the 6 and 7.
so our 8th graders did have all 3 years of it,
No, 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 no,
Our
they're just
7th
getting them
graders had 2
now.
years.
There you go.
and then our 6th graders
Because they
had
were
1 year of
6th
it.
graders last year.
And
Correct.
do you see a difference between the scores of our 6th and 7th?
7th
versus
were
our
higher.
8th? Because I think this lumped it together, I think.
It does lump it together, the 7th grade, but you know what? To be honest and transparent, 7th grade scores are higher every year. They were higher, but they were higher before we did that. 7th grade scores are higher.
So you're not seeing a significant difference?
Not yet.
Yet, and you're feeling like that's because this is the beginning of rolling it out?
I think it's right, because the implementation takes a while. Teachers need to learn they have to learn that program, right? They needed to adjust the curriculum. Yeah, and I do think that that's fair, 1 year to get them going. The second year, you may start seeing some increase, but by the 3rd year, you should.
And so we're increasing the professional development in that area?
Tremendous amount of professional development. So professional development came along with, Matt Sadowski comes and he talks about the companies come out and they do professional development. And that does absolutely happen. But we have established over the last couple of years time for teachers to work together with the supervisor. That time's invaluable because we have the teachers talking back and forth, what's working, what's not working, sharing ideas of instructional practices that may work for you and I haven't tried yet. That's another area of professional development that we are improving upon. And I think we're doing, and if you talk to the teachers, I think that they would agree that they find that time very valuable as well.
Are you concerned that based on this 2-year gap in the rollout of the reading program to the rest of the elementary schools, that you will see a discrepancy when those kids all get combined into 6th grade between the kids who had the reading and writing program for the extra 2 years compared to the kids who did not?
You can see it already. Even with the students who had it last year in 5th grade at West Rock Hill, the teachers who have those kids now already see a difference. So there will be a difference because we had that rollout that way. But over time, that diminishes.
So what do we do about, how do we fix, what can we do about that?
So in terms of programming, This is smart to talk to you. But in terms of.
I'm sorry.
That's
I'll,
I feel like I'm-
I'll back up. It's me. I'm the problem.
You're
Okay.
always a problem.
We know what the eligible content is on PSSAs. So at the elementary level, we know what kids are being tested on. We know that 25% of that score is going to be on text-dependent analysis. That's what it is. So we teach all students, doesn't matter which program you're in, they're all getting professional development and work in the classrooms with those particular standards and skills. So it's not like we don't do that for everybody, right? But the reality is, if you're doing being a writer, making meaning, and words their way, you have a more robust and balanced program. That is the truth. Your skill development may be different from students who don't have it yet. But there was and is a strong rationale for doing it the way we're doing it. Professional development matters most, at least in my mind, the way we roll that out. I am the first one to say I want it all. I have to have Dr. Bolton to say, wait, because I fear those types of things too, but I know it's the right thing to do.
Well, I'm curious when you see teachers like at Sellersville who were like, I want it all now, what the perspective would be for the other schools.
And to be perfectly honest, not everybody's ready for it all now. So while we did have teachers who wanted to go right into making meaning, and I think we've had this discussion, I wasn't even comfortable to begin with saying, okay, now you're having another reading program after I'm just introducing the writing program. And it takes a while to understand that. But they were chomping at the bit, and they wanted that. So those schools in particular said, we are willing to do that extra work, because it's a lot of work. And they wanted it. And far be it from us to say you can't have it. You know, if you're willing to do that, that's why we have so many pilot teachers, the 23 or 21 teachers for Words Their Way. Yeah, give it to them, get them to be proficient at it, so that they can be the trainers and help us get everybody on board.
So we are letting the teachers who want to do it. And
There are
they're
teachers
piloting
doing it.
Okay. You talked about how kids that are, particularly at the high school level in special ed, that the science is, they perform better in science than they do in the other areas. And part of that has to do with the fact that it's a co-teaching model in science at the high school.
It is.
And it's not in math and reading. And so when you look at that difference, that significant difference, do you feel like it would be beneficial to those kids if we moved to a co-teaching model in those other areas, and maybe you would see that kind of significant proficiency and growth with those students? Because it really indicates to me that that inclusive model and that co-teaching model is beneficial to those kids.
It absolutely is, and we see that. And just by virtue of being taught the standards, but having two teachers in the room certainly is a benefit. But science isn't the only area where there's co-teaching at the high school.
Well, no, but when you talk about the math and ELA, is there?
We have co-teaching across the board at the high school. We do.
Well, you said that in science they're fully included, and so, but that's not happening as much in the reading, and that's not happening as much in reading, writing, and math.
What we saw, I think, okay, so what we had was a separate class in science, not a separate class, well, actually there is a separate class in terms of reading. I always highlight the science, because what we were doing, at least when I first got here, is we were pulling those students out, giving them a separate class entirely. So I'm not in algebra in terms of math. I'm not in bio. I'm in a transitional course. That was the glaring need in science, which we are using as the model to say you need to be included in the general ed curriculum with certain supports.
But aren't they still taking the transitional math that they
No.
like they were with the transitional biology?
No,
There's no more transition.
no, that we don't have any transitional courses
So you
anymore.
moved to that model for all three areas. So they are.
We do.
They are being fully included. They're not in a separate class.
No, they're not. They are not. Now, unless there is a subgroup of students who are.
Because I remember us voting on the schedule when we were going over that last, for the next year, and there were classes with lower numbers in it, and we were told that it was because there was transitional.
It's PTLS, so it's part-time learning support. That is a separate class. But I could tell you right now, that class is phenomenal. The work they're doing in that PTLS class at the high school is phenomenal. I think half that class was proficient on the bio exam. So that is the special class. So you are correct. Where you saw like 8 or 9 students in the class, it's called PTLS. It's a part-time learning support class. So those students have significant learning disabilities. The learning support students identified with a learning disability, they're the students I'm talking about just in the general ed curriculum with supports. And they need to stay there.
The 504 plan, are there changes being made to help in that area to see why we're weak with those students, why those scores have gone down?
Typical accommodations for 504, students with 504 are separate seating, small location for testing. Students who have 504 plans have accommodations. A lot of students, number of students, have ADHD, so distractibility. Those are the types of issues, unless it's a medical 504 for other reasons that may even be more severe than that. So we do give them the accommodations that are listed, testing accommodations that are listed in their 504 plans. So short of that, you have to look at their actual learning profile.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
So
Yeah,
you'd be
because
looking
you
at
can
that student
have
by student.
very,
Exactly.
they can vary from year to year
Right.
who those people are.
One of the issues that we saw though was that we couldn't get homebound instructors,
Mhm.
and now we've increased
Mm-hmm.
what
What
we
we're
pay
paying
them.
them, right.
And have you seen a difference? Have you seen that now we're able to get the staffing that we need in that area because of that increase, or?
And this is what I can tell you about the homebound teachers, because homebound is run through pupil services. Every time I got involved in homebound is because we didn't have the homebound teachers and we were looking for cyber options. I haven't had one request for homebound for cyber options. So the answer that I'm going to give you is I haven't had any requests. So I don't know the answer on how many students require it and if there's been any difficulty. But I can tell you it's December and I haven't had one request. You're welcome.
What year is this for the algebra then? You know, the algebra program was changed too. It's
This
supposed
one.
to become more, this is just the
Mhm.
first?
So 8th and algebra.
Okay.
So we're getting there. And I know it's slow, but there was a lot of work that had to be done. And we are on the right track ensuring that our students are in standards aligned courses where our curriculum development meets the needs of all students. Because you can have a standards aligned curriculum, but if your instructional practices aren't differentiated to meet the needs of all students, you're not going to get where you want to go. So I think I'm so proud of the work for special education in particular, because year after year it would be, they're not making any gains, they're not making any gains. We are right there where we're getting it. And even for, and I'm sure that you'll all be interested to know that we needed a multisensory approach to word study, and that's what you heard tonight. For all students, have to have that. But that's not even enough for some students. Some students have severe reading disabilities, and they require intensive instruction, right? Explicit, intense, systematic instruction. So our special education teachers have been provided with materials and training in, it's called Foundations. If you're familiar with Wilson reading was designed for adults and adolescents. This program was adapted with the same Orton-Gillingham philosophical base and instruction for young children. We need to make sure we get them kindergarten, first grade, and second grade. Because by the time they get to third grade, the likelihood that we're going to remediate that becomes significantly less. So we've done a lot of work with primary and literacy over the last few years. So I'm starting to be able to breathe easier knowing that we're meeting the needs of most students in one way, but we have another avenue for students who have pretty severe reading disabilities, because that's a brain-based reality. You can see those on MRIs. You can see that the brain is different dyslexia is a term that people have different meanings for. But a true reading disability, your brain is different. You do need to learn in a different way. So we are there in the primary grades. We're there across the board because we do have those programs for students. So that's some of the work that's being done, that ultimately the whole system improves over time. The AP, so we're all up there. The kids who struggle, we're working with those kids. Data team meetings so that the building principals and teachers know who their kids are as learners. Differentiate instruction so we can meet the needs of all. That's the work that we're doing.
You were talking about carrying over the reading and writing to the middle school level.
Mhm.
What is your timeline for that?
So we're going to be talking about being a writer. Right now it's being piloted in 6th grade. So Hillary actually will be coming in January for that proposal for being a writer. We're not sure about making meaning for 6th grade yet. So we are still in discussion about that to make sure that we make the right decision for middle school. But being a writer, absolutely. Hands down, all the teachers, that's the way we're going for writing.
Now, is it going to be difficult for the kids who did not get exposed to it in elementary school and then will be getting it in middle school?
It would be the same thing as not having it in the elementary. Right, it's going to be better than what they would have had without it. So, it's a good thing across the board.
And just the one thing you said with the algebra, the kids taking algebra, that kind of explains some of the dip in the regular math skills, and so you're going to be pulling those back into the algebra curriculum. But my only concern with that would be is that we changed the algebra to become, it was supposed to become more rigorous, right? And so I wouldn't want to give up the rigor of the Algebra 1 program to satisfy some PSSA score goal.
And it is far more difficult that we are finding to do it there than in geometry.
Okay.
So I'm not saying every single thing that we miss in for the PSSA math, we can do it. Where it's appropriate and makes sense, we're doing it.
Okay.
Okay, we do not want to do that either.
Okay.
And we won't. We're just trying any which way that we can help students.
PSSA.
Yeah, well,
But yeah.
maybe one day.
Maybe one day. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And that was the end of the agenda, which would bring us back to public comment. If you can remember how long, I was going to say it was a long time ago. But
Any questions for Dr. Bolton regarding the grading system with the plus and minuses that are going to change next year's classes, but 5 years, 1920? What happens with their GPAs regarding that when they've been on one grading system for 3 years and then they're changing? For like my daughter's a junior, so her senior year would be different than her freshman, sophomore, junior year. How accurate would it then make her GPA if she was on, if she, had an 80 and 91 that was worth a 4.0, but then her senior year it's not worth a 4.0 anymore? Do you understand what I mean?
Right.
So I'm not putting it down, I'm just trying to understand it and how it'll affect her.
It's when you think about the class rank index, as well as the decile information in terms of providing that, all of the students within a class have worked off the same set of rules specific to GPA, which is what you're talking about. So everyone has had 3 years of the current grading scale, and everyone in your daughter's case would have 1 year of the new grading scale. And so from that impact, there won't be no impact, because obviously the courses you're taking will change that in terms of that. Although all the students will have that information as they're going in program planning, in terms of that is an option for them, because that will incentivize some courses from a GPA standpoint if that's your sole goal, in terms of that piece. And so the thought process was everyone within that class will be impacted equally, and that students will then make that decision, and we felt like it was valuable enough. Because the stories that really triggered some of that is a student who's sitting at an 86% going into a final. The current grading scale encourages you to calculate how little can I do to get an 80, because that's a 3.0.
Right.
As opposed to the new grading scale that hopefully will say, what do I need to do to get an 87 or a 90, because that will come with a GPA bump.